Fantasy Baseball Podcast. This is the first edition of the week. As always, I'm your host, Colby Conway, at Colby R. Conway. And 4th of July is here. Matt Selz, how's everything going for you, my friend? At the Selz Man on Twitter.
It's going pretty well. Getting pumped for, usually we have a couple of days off in this industry for 4th of July. Yeah, there's still some games, but, getting patriotic. Probably going to do some grilling tomorrow for the 4th. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Hot. Unbearably hot.
Yeah. I haven't had quite the heat here yet, but we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday this weekend. We had ridiculous thunderstorms roll through that just blew my gate off the hinges. I had to go fix that now.
Yeah, I think we have the weather that in terms of that. I think that's coming starting tonight or tomorrow. I believe we're recording this Monday, a little before noontime, Monday, July 3rd. But I've had a heat advisory the past 4 days that has been issued starting at 7:30, 8 in the morning.
That's not fun.
Here in North Carolina. So it's already 89 right now, feels like 100, and it's 11 o'clock. And then yesterday when my wife and we had some errands and stuff that we were running in the morning, started our workout around 3 or 4 o'clock, and it was 91, felt like 102 as we worked out in our garage. So
it's 80 here, but only feels like 82. So
89 feels like 100. So, but you know what? I will take that because from where I'm from up in the Northeast, come October, when they're wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts, I can still go sit on the beach. So I will gladly take it. But let me tell you this. Aside from the weather, I got some other complaints, Matt. I got some other things that I want to insert expletive here about. I don't know if I can actually say it or not, but I want to complain a little bit. So let's open the show. Let's talk about this monstrosity of these MLB All-Star Game rosters. I don't even know where to begin. I have 4 different launching points that I could go off of, and one of them is probably the least relevant of them. But I'm going to start with this one. How? Let me start. How does Wander Franco not make the All-Star game? We'll talk about him. And then also, did Fernando Tatis Jr. simply not make it because of the PED suspension? Or am I thinking that the MLB was trying to basically punish him again for the suspension or for the PED usage?
So that's an excellent question. We'll talk about Wander Franco a bit later in the show. I don't know how Fernando Tatis didn't make it. Could it be like the fans haven't paid attention to the Padres, who are getting a little better in the last month or so? Because there's been this narrative that the Padres have been terrible this year. And yes, their record isn't what we expected it to be, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Tatis Jr. has been fantastic this year. One of the best in baseball at any position in general. Juan Soto starting to figure it out. He made it as a reserve for the NL, but no Fernando Tatis Jr. So, it might be the PED thing. I don't know. But that's one of the issues that I have. There are numerous. Why is Orlando Arcia the starting shortstop for the NL?
Yeah, I mean,
why?
Yeah, that one's bad. And let me go back to Tatis quick. Off the top of your head, do you know how many players there are in Major League Baseball with at least 16 home runs and 14 stolen bases as of right now?
At least 16 homers and at least 14 steals?
It's not many, but
I think it's like 3.
3. It is Fernando Tatis, 16-14. I'm looking over here on my screen. Corbin Carroll at 17-24. Acuna at 21-39. Acuna is 83 games. Corbin Carroll is 80 games. Fernando Tatis is 64 games. Sorry, not an all-star, though.
Yeah,
Now, the Arcia thing, that's the good team luxury. I want to say tax, but it's more of a benefit. That's the good team
like the 2015
tax break.
Royals, right? Where they got like everybody on the starting AL roster was a Royal, for better or worse. But if you look at, and I know F4 is not exactly the best way to do this, but if you look at F4 and you're just looking at National League shortstops, and we're going to narrow it to guys with at least 150 plate appearances because, again, Arcia missed some time, right? Where do you think Orlando Arcia ranks in WAR among only NL shortstops?
Well, he made he's the All-Star game starter, so one would think he's probably pretty high, but I know that's not the case. I mean, I'm going to take a very conservative guess and say outside the top 7 or 8.
He's fifth. He's basically right there with like Xander Bogaerts, slightly ahead of Trey Turner. But he's behind Matt McClain, who's having a heck of a rookie year. In 20 fewer games, Matt McClain has as many home runs, more runs, as many RBI, more steals, and better batting average on base and slugging than Orlando Arcia. McClain is fourth. Lindor is third. Perdomo is second, and Dansby Swanson, who got relegated to reserve duty, is one F4. Like he's at 2.8. Arcia is at 1.9. So he's almost a game better in F4 halfway through a season, and that guy's relegated to reserve duty. I don't understand it. And I've been campaigning for no fan votes for the All-Star game for a while, and they just keep proving me correct. They just missed. Like, I get having Matt Olson and Albies and Riley and Acuna and Sean Murphy on the All-Star team. I don't get Orlando Arcia.
I mean, when you look, I know it's not the National League, but all Arcia has been this year is JP Crawford with a higher batting average.
Yep.
And we've never probably even considered Crawford at all in terms of All-Star game. And then also, like, I know he's come on more of late and there was a bit of a slow start, but Ezekiel Tovar has more home runs, more stolen bases, more runs scored, more RBI. He's just hitting about 30-ish points lower.
Yeah, but
Why
that's
not
the Coors
him?
effect, right?
The what?
That's the Coors effect, right? We don't give credit to people who
That's
play in
true.
Coors, right?
That's true. But I mean, if it's numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's
Yep.
numbers. And I bet I would let me ask you this. It's basically just a question based off a comment I made earlier. If Arcia is having this season, and let's say he was the shortstop for any other team, does he make the All-Star game? Does he get this bump? You think he's just getting the Braves bump?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it's exactly what you said. Like, he's on a good team. He gets credit for being on a good team. So, that he's there. For example, CJ Abrams has almost the same. He has the same number of homers, almost the same counting stats, way more steals. Granted, the batting average is worse, but he's on the terrible Nats, and so he doesn't even get considered, which I'm not saying he's an all-star. I'm just saying if you swap those two guys, I guarantee you that CJ Abrams is a starting shortstop in the National League because he was on the Braves.
And then opposite of the like a Braves bump or the good team bonus that when it comes to all-star voting, every team's got to get a representative. I get it. I know sometimes you're grasping for straws for players, but I can't be the only one that could have picked 2 or 3 other Tigers to get in instead of Michael Lorenzen.
Yeah, we read the rule, and the guy doesn't even have to be healthy enough to play, nor does he actually have to play in the game. So why not Eduardo Rodriguez, who's been really quite good for the Tigers when he's been on the mound? Like, obviously he's hurt now, but he's been pretty good for them this year while he's been on the bump.
And then even Erod would be my choice as well. And like, sure, you want to take Lorenzen. He's at 82 innings on the year, 14 starts. Eduardo's only a couple starts behind and a
Yeah.
handful of innings. It's not like Lorenzen's pushing amongst the league leaders in innings pitched. I know Erod's missed a good amount of time, but he's better than Lorenzen in every category. And then even if you don't go Lorenzen, I mean, looking at the offense, I would I wouldn't give it to Torque. I know he's coming on a bit late with power. I probably wouldn't go to him. I mean, Zach McKinstry's been good in terms of average homers and steals. I mean, he wouldn't be the most appealing option there. Andy Ibanez has come on a bit of late. You could look at the closer who's been half decent if the American League needed relievers. Or I hadn't even considered this, but he's only 6 homers behind Orlando Arcia for the year. So I guess we have to consider him. But you said for nostalgia's sake, give it to Miggy. He's 77 years old. It's his last All-Star game. Let's go out with some nostalgia. I would take any of those guys above Michael Lorenzen at this point in the All-Star game. That's the one that I understand each team's got to be represented. I just don't get how they came to Lorenzen.
Right. Like, give Miggy the send-off in front of the fans, in front of a very good baseball crowd in Seattle. Let him go out with sure. Is it going to tack on another all-star thing to his resume? Okay. But it's not like he's not a Hall of Famer to begin with, even without one more all-star team, right? So just sentimentality. Just give the fans a chance to see Miggy one last. He doesn't even have to play. Just have him out there and wave to the fans, and everybody will be fine. I'm with you. I don't get the pick there for the Tigers. I have less of an issue in the American League, although, I mean, I get Aaron Judge had a pretty good year when he was healthy, but I kind of dislike it when guys who are having equal years but are healthy get outvoted by dudes who got injured simply because the fan base was bigger. The biggest gripe is certainly Wander Franco on the American League side, but other than that, I can't really complain about any of the pitchers. Can't look at a single one of those guys and say they don't deserve to be there. Congrats on Baltimore, by the way, for getting quite a few All-Stars this year.
They're the future.
I love this Shohei takes up the DH and the pitching spot, by the way, which he should. I'm just saying.
Agreed.
I love that. Saves a spot. Gave
Agreed.
Somebody else.
And it's one of those things too, where like we get all this outrage, and then in the coming days, like starters are going to end up throwing, their last game a day or two before, so they're not going to go, and we're going to get all these alternates that come into play. So don't get me wrong, I do think we'll see Wander at the All-Star game, but the fact that he wasn't voted in from the onset, that's the issue. Other guys like Paul Goldschmidt probably deserve some consideration. David Bednar should got a ton of consideration for it, but honestly, a lot of these snubs that we all say and see, we're going to see half of them in the game anyway.
I mean, yeah, but I always feel bad about like, oh, this guy still made it. So like that takes some of the heat. Yeah, he made it because dudes got hurt. Like he should have just made it to begin with. Right. But I mean, that'll surely happen because I know we're going to talk about one of these guys coming up in the injury segment that made it who won't make the trip to Seattle.
Yep, absolutely. But, and we'll talk a little bit more about the rosters. Everyone has plenty of time to complain and moan about it and then get the alternates, and we'll have all from there. But Matt, as we're recording this, it's a Monday. Over at fantasyalarm.com, Justin Fensterman, the incomparable, the one and only, put out his fantasy baseball injury report, and there are some big names in this week. So let's start. Shane McClanahan, all-star himself, potential Cy Young guy. Mid-back tightness, they pushed him back a couple of days. He made a start. Didn't look right. Didn't look good. The IL stint at this point made sense. I understand them trying to wait it out once, but the fact that it bothered him again, it makes sense. Put him on the IL. He's way too valuable. They'll be fine for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. They'll be fine. You got to have him for the stretch.
And by the way, for fantasy owners here, this is about the best time to go on the IL because the 10 days isn't game action. It's 10 or 15 calendar days, regardless of, it's not games. It's just days. So he goes on the IL now. 15 days puts it basically right after the All-Star break. So he's really only going to miss maybe 1, maybe 2 starts tops. So, this kind of saves you some of that. But by the way, have you taken a look at the rotation that the Rays have on the IL?
You mean the one that's probably a top 3 unit in Major League Baseball?
Shane Baz, Josh Fleming, Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs.
I think I'm going to stand by my comment.
Yeah, that's the worst one is Josh Fleming, and we would still have him on our fantasy teams as an SP5, right?
Mhm.
So that's pretty ridiculous. That they have that much depth because they still, by the way, have Glasnow, Bradley, Eflin, and Chirinos in their starting four. So they are. If you're wondering how the Rays are winning so much, that's how they have a redonkulous amount of pitching.
Yep, and you made a good point as well. So he's on the IL. Let's just say, to make it very simple, from the time they're recording it, two calendar weeks
Right.
is when he makes his return. He comes back the 17th. During those whole 14 calendar days, he would only have missed that day. He would come back would be the 9th game, so a start or two.
You're probably 2 starts, right? Because you.
Yep. And if they can push him a couple days, he can avoid facing Texas too, which we all know how good they are against lefties. So there could
They
be
have 4 starters on the American League All-Star team, and I don't have a problem with any of them.
Exactly. So McClanahan's going to miss a start or two, but hopefully it won't be much past that. For fantasy managers, I can almost assuredly tell you those fantasy managers with Jazz Chisholm Jr., super excited to get him back. What a fun week it was. Don't go watch the video. It is not good.
I saw it. I saw it like 1 minute I saw it on Twitter like a minute after it happened, and he swings and yanks, like immediately lets go of the bat and holds his oblique, and then things turned bleak real quick.
Ooh, oblique from the oblique.
Yeah, spelled 2 different ways, by the way, because we love English, right?
Yes, of course. We absolutely do.
It's not great, right? Obliques tend to linger. They tend to be the trickiest soft muscle or soft tissue injury to come back from because you're never quite sure when it's 100%. Because the only way to test it is to swing, and then that risks injuring it, right? So he's probably going to be out for. Do you think he comes back by the end of July?
No.
It's like mid-August, right?
In my unprofessional medical opinion, in that I also give very broad ranges, I'm thinking 6 to 8 weeks. Just from what we've typically seen from obliques, like it can go as long as 8. I don't think this is a 4-week thing. Just because he also was banged up a bit before. I know, separate issue, but that's still involved. I wouldn't plan for end of July. I'd look early to mid-August.
Yeah, that's
so. And hopefully we get more information about it, and that way, from actual licensed individual in the field, not me being the podcast doctor type that's just kind of speculating. But obliques typically we're in that 4 to 6 week range.
Yeah, if they're the mild kind, if they're and it depends on the guy, right? Because obviously some dudes heal faster, some dudes don't. Didn't the Bengals say that Jamar Chase healed faster because he's just that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was their medical opinion. He's just that dude. So maybe just Chisholm is that dude. I don't know, but it's kind of unfortunate. He's kind of becoming the Byron Buxton of the NL.
Unfortunately, I think that comp is all too closely correct. Unfortunately,
power, speed,
injured.
Average, gets hurt a lot.
Yep. And technically their initial report was day-to-day. This is not a day-to-day thing. It's day-to-day until the test comes back. That's all it is. They're just waiting for the test. That's all it is.
It's day-to-day because it happened on a holiday weekend and it takes 4 extra days to get a test back.
Yeah, that is exactly it. And then speaking of bleakness with obliques, Royce Lewis also IL with an oblique. He's an interesting one too because the numbers have been good. They haven't let him run. Nope. And I don't think this is going to really help. I know it's because he was coming back from the knee, so they were trying to play it careful with him. But now, on top of being cautious from the knee, now an oblique issue. I mean, he's the only guy in that lineup that was really hitting for average reliably. So I don't think if you were banking on Royce Lewis coming up and giving you a bunch of stolen bases,
it hasn't happened.
If you were waiting for that ship just to get through enough games and you were expecting that ship to set sail here, maybe post All-Star break, that ship is docked. that ship is not leaving the harbor anytime soon.
Nope, definitely not. Same thing. Obliques are tricky. Man, I feel bad for the Twins though, man. They got a lot of offensive stuff that just hasn't gone their way.
Mm-hmm.
This year. Nick Gordon, when he was there, was terrible, and then he broke a bone. So he's out for a while. Royce Lewis can't stay healthy. None of their power bats have really taken off. So just disappointing across the board for the Twins. Would you? I'm contemplating dropping Royce Lewis at this point.
Yeah, I think in a shorter,
You can
in
find
shorter
guys that are
benches, I
hot that
will.
won't kill your average, and then provide some counting stats.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, shorter redraft formats. I think I would too. Like that 326 average will be hard, but you can stream, like back when
right, but how
Ryan
many
O'Hearn was
at bats did
hot.
that come over? Because if it's a
Right.
326 average over like 50 at bats, it's not really changing your ratios on your team very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and you can ride the hot bat. Find someone who's hot for that week,
Yep.
pick them up, get a couple homers, whatever, drop them, and just kind of keep shuffling this. Royce Lewis wasn't necessarily doing. I don't want to diminish what he's done this season, but he wasn't a world beater. He wasn't a
Okay.
fantasy game changer. Like his 326 average, 4 home runs, 1 stolen base, 15 RBI, 11 runs across 26 games and 95 at bats. You can piecemeal that together from 3 or 4
Correct.
hot bats that you pick up over the course of a couple weeks. So, yeah, I'm with you. Shorter redraft. I'm probably dropping Royce Lewis at this point. And then on the mound, shoulder issues for Michael Kopech and Clayton Kershaw. Kopech oft injured. Clayton Kershaw is just old, and he's due for his yearly IL stint. Hasn't happened. He's ready for it now. He deemed now is the time. Kopech's a little bit interesting. If I'm not mistaken, he had an arm angle adjustment, and it led to like 3 or 4 outings with like 8+ Ks. And he's been knocked around a little bit here. He's also had a little bit of history of arm problems. So,
Yeah.
how are you approaching these 2 injuries? Because both are just a little bit different in their own right, albeit both shoulder issues.
I'm watching them like a hawk, to be honest, and see what exactly this amounts to. If it's just rest, okay, great. But if they find something else that's going to take them out for a while, then I have to reconsider, right? Kershaw, for the last, 6 years, hasn't pitched a full season. Normally, it's a back thing with Kershaw. So I don't know if he was doing something to protect his back and then triggered a shoulder. Because obviously everything is all connected there. But this just seems like a yearly, hey, I kind of need a rest now. Let's do this. And at a time, it doesn't really kill the team that much because it is coming up on the All-Star break. Either that or he's trying to start another Dodger baby boom because we saw that last year with the All-Star game. Why if you paid attention earlier this year, like every Dodger that went to the All seemingly every Dodger, anybody that was associated with the Dodgers last year all went on paternity leave at basically the same time. That's because the All-Star game was in LA. They didn't have to travel. They had a baby boom. Maybe Kershaw wants to do that again. I don't know. For
Maybe.
Kopech, we'll wait and see. Shoulders are tricky, but I'm not pushing the panic button just yet.
And Matt, of course, the first edition of the week, we always do flavor of the week or food for thought. So, Matt, what is on that mind of yours here as we head into the beginning parts of this week?
Yeah, so this one's not necessarily going to be fantasy baseball related. It's more of a PSA, right? I'm going to tie it in with some food. It's 4th of July. I talked about grilling at the top of the show. I'll be making some burgers and some dogs, maybe some brats. We'll see. Just like fireworks, they can be traumatizing for some people. So let's just be a little bit considerate. I'm not saying don't celebrate, don't show your love of America or whatever, or blowing things up, whatever it comes down to for you. Just make sure your neighbors are cool with it, right? I have dogs. Couple that with thunderstorms the last 3 days and fireworks for a week, and my dog has had to be on like calm meds every night for a week, which sucks. There's veterans I know who don't do well with fireworks because it triggers stuff from their service, right? So let's just be. I also have a daughter who uses a hearing aid. She doesn't like the fireworks either because it amplifies the sound right into her head. So let's just be considerate of people. Not saying you can't celebrate, just saying, be be kind, be considerate. and then have fun.
I am all for having the fireworks on July 4th, but it is July 4th, not July 2nd through 7th. That's what I always like to think. So take it on the 4th. And Matt, I'm going to keep mine short. MLB All-Star rosters are like moldy blueberries. That's how it is. There's some good ones mixed in there, but then you'll find the one with a little bit of mold, and then the one next to it's got a little bit of mold, and then you just got to kind of throw out that whole corner. And I just saw these lineups and the rosters and all the alternates, and sure, we're gonna get a good batch of alternates. They went to the store and you got another pack, but I don't like it. MLB
By the way,
All-Star
the
rosters,
jerseys are
moldy
trash
blueberries.
too.
Just adds fuel to the fire. And Matt, to wrap up the first edition of this week, it's everyone's favorite game show. Name that player. Hinted at this one a bit, but this is the All-Star Snub edition within this game show. But I am arguably the biggest snub from the All-Star game this year. Ronald Acuna Jr. and I are the only players in Major League Baseball with at least 9 home runs and 25 stolen bases. And I'm one of just 3 players with 9 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and a 280 batting average, 280 plus batting average. The other 2 are All-Stars, by the way. I have the best WAR at my position and tied for 4th best overall in Major League Baseball, yet not good enough to make the American League All-Star team. What ALE shortstop am I?
You would be the wondrous Wander Franco.
What a joke.
I don't understand what this kid has to like. He showed up, right? Like the first year, it was like, oh, everybody oversold him. He's not the greatest thing ever, right? And then he's just been developing. Sometimes these guys take a little while longer, right? Tampa had the leeway to develop him. They signed him to like an 8-year, $100 million contract after like 6 games or something, right? But I don't know what this guy has to do to make an all-star team. You said it. He's 4th best in WAR in baseball, regardless of position.
Yep.
So he's a top 5 overall player and not good enough to make 1/2 of the league's all-star team?
Yep. And you know what? I'm fine. I don't mind Corey Seager. I'm glad Corey Seager made the team as the starter. I still think Wander should have been there, but Bo Bichette as the reserve shortstop, that's the one I don't like. And don't even get me started on Whit Merrifield. But before I go beyond there, Matt, we teased this one last week. We're bringing it back here. So, AL West starting pitcher. Fantasy managers love what I did last year, mainly compiling an 11.7 K per 9 across 148 innings with a 2.54 ERA, but this year has not been the same. My strikeout rate is down nearly 11 points from last year. Despite getting more swings out of the zone, my swinging strike rate has dropped over 2 percentage points, and my contact rate has jumped up nearly 4.5 percentage points. Not much has changed with my pitch mix. Velo is slightly down, albeit not overly concerning. And last year, I had a 28% strikeout rate against left-handed hitters, but this year it's just 14.7%, and my batting average allowed to left-handed hitters is almost up 100 points. So to wrap up this week's show, who is that AL West starting pitcher? And on the level of concern, throwing it back to the pods from last year, shout out to the listeners from last year as well. What is your level of concern with this AL West right-handed starting pitcher?
Are you Christian Javier?
I sure am.
Yes. There's decent concern when your pitch mix from last year was good and you're getting more guys swinging out of the zone, yet your rates are dropping. I'm not exactly sure where you go to fix that. Now, here's my question, and as a former catcher, maybe you could chip in here. Could it be sequencing? Could it be that he's throwing the same percentage of pitches, but he's not sequencing them as better, so guys are sitting on pitches more later in counts? Because I could throw 100 pitches in 2 different games, throw the same percentage and sequence them and get totally different outcomes against the same team, right? So that, other than that, I don't really know aside from Texas being better than they were, and the Angels offense being better, but you still have Seattle is striking out a ton and Oakland is a AAA team. So I don't know. That's the only thing that's catching my eye, is that maybe it's sequencing it in individual at bats.
Yep. Concern should be relatively high with Javier, and over his last 4 starts, a 3.1 K per 9, 7.27 ERA. As we're recording this, he's about to pitch in a couple of hours. So we'll have to see the returns there. But Matt, it's been a pleasure with you this week, and we'll be back a couple days for the next edition. But give Matt a follow on Twitter at the Selzman. I'm on Twitter at Colby R. Conway. Let us know what you think about the MLB All-Star Game rosters, and we will see you later this week for the next edition of the Fantasy Alarm